Appreciate the introduction. Thank you, Randy, and thank you everyone that's joining remotely here. Um, yeah, Critter Guards, we've been around, 25 years now. We're a small business, headquartered in Kansas. We've been, pretty much one claim to fame, and that is keeping squirrels from causing animal outages. So, the presentation is a little humorous look at what people have said about, squirrels. They're, fun to talk about. Everybody sort of gets a snicker when you say, well, what do you do? Well, we keep squirrels off power lines. Um, so it's like, really? Is that serious? So we'll talk a little bit about how serious that is and what some of our customers around the world are saying, as well as some third parties. So just to start off with some kind of older quotes, but these are still relevant today. Gentleman Marcus Sachs was Senior Vice President, Chief Security Officer at NERC, and he said about 10 years ago that cyber hackers was what everybody was worried about. The Russians, the Chinese, whoever, that, nefarious actors would hack into the grid. But he made it clear that squirrels are still the number one threat to the grid. Uh, Similarly, John Inglis, former National Security Agency, um, basically admits that the number one threat experienced to date by the U.S. electrical grid is squirrels. And any of us that have ever seen a substation blow sky high to come back later and find this roasted squirrel, we know that's true. So it doesn't really seem to matter. This chart is, again, somewhat dated, but recent data indicates that it's still accurate even in today's time frame. There's no shortage of squirrels, and as Randy mentioned, I've been around the globe in various walks of life. There are squirrels in every country, or squirrel. They may not call them squirrels, but they're small crawling rodents, and they cause these kinds of problems. So you can kind of see there is a seasonality in late spring, early summer, and again this time of year. It comes and goes, but the threat is always there. To bring it a little more current day, Critter Guard has now for several years maintained our own outage tracker. So basically, we go out and web crawl the internet when there's a public statement by the local news in Timbuktu. It makes the papers. We had an outage. Our web crawler will find those and we track those over the course of a year. And then we update that, on a periodic basis. So if you're curious, take a look at that link, critterguard.org, for the power outage stats. You can just do a search if you want to in our search engine and find that. Um, some other recent data in 2023, we know that there's a lot of events here. I mean, there's over 5 million customers that have lost power, 74,000 individual events. It's expensive to lose power, regardless of what sort of business you're in, small, medium, or large. Some of those outages can really cost serious money. Um, just animal related only in 2023, over 7,000 outages caused by squirrels. We get a lot of this data from American Public Power. There are polls and queries going on all the time, and we constantly pay attention to those kinds of things. So it's a very prevalent thing. So you could say, well, gee, Critter Guard must not be doing a great job because there's still all these occurrences. We're not killing squirrels. We've got customers that say, hey, how do I do this? And we talk to them about Critter Guard, and they say, oh, well, we just use a shotgun for that. Well, you can probably do that depending on where you're based. But the governments tend to, and your neighbors might frown kind of strongly at that remediation technique. More stats here in 2020. Utility customers specifically said over 1.3 billion hours of power outage. 2019, one in four companies says that happens at least once a month. And Squirrels, I can't remember who made this comment. This might have been American Public Power, definitely. And that data has been consistent year in and year out, depending on where you are, at least in North America. The Northeast and the Midwest are the two most prevalent regions for squirrel-caused outages, and happens every year. And in just specifically from Entergy, one of our large customers, they said in 2019 they had more than 15,000 animal-related outages. So it's not a trivial problem. Happens a lot. Costs of animal outages are very expensive. We've got estimates ranging up to 10 billion, over the entire industry. Animal caused outages can be over $1 million per episode. We had one close to us here years ago in a substation, small municipal utility that had, uh, you know, traditional um, animal mitigation covers and guards. Squirrel bypassed all of that, and literally it looked like a firework display. It was an unbelievable thing that made the rounds on Facebook and social media. So it's definitely a serious issue. So, and again, especially with some of the new technologies coming, drivers I'm talking about here, if we look at some of the efforts that utilities are specifically saying, we're going to put more effort toward this to solve this problem. Some of you, depending on where you're working, you may have programs like this with similar names. These are just some I came up with. But, well, we're going to focus on substation reliability. We're going to focus on grid hardening. One of our customers calls their program Perfect Power. Everybody's got a name for how we're going to take care of it. Our question is, don't bypass the obvious. Is animal mitigation part of your strategy? Because you can do all these high-tech things, but if you're bypassing or ignoring the simple strategy of animal mitigation, you're missing out on a big opportunity to solve some problems at a very low cost. So the rest of this presentation is going to focus on, okay, well, what's CritterGuard all about? Why are we here? What's different? And so we'll go through kind of what we do there. That starts with just getting the context of what we do. It's called Critter Guard, so we're keeping critters at bay, but there are lots and lots of guards out there by multiple competitors. Most of them take a form similar that you'll see on the screen here. They're covers or guards or even shields or blankets, any number of different, and they're all for different sizes and different voltage ratings and different configurations and spacing. Many of them are specifically molded out of advanced or other high-tech materials for insulation resistance and dielectric strength and on and on and on. CritterGuard doesn't take that approach. We're very unique compared to most of those other suppliers. Those guards for the competitors are designed to fit over a device, a terminal, a bushing, an insulator, any number of other terminations that are live and energized. So the guard has to specifically be designed and fit for that specific device. Line guard and pole guard from CritterGuard don't take that approach. How can we do that? And the answer is we block the access rather than cover the device. So it goes back to how do we come up with that thought years ago? And the question is, what is common among all overhead equipment? Well, they're all connected to something. They all have a conductor of some size, and some voltage rating connecting that device. Most of the utility industry is not worried about the conductor itself. We're interested in the termination point where that bridging effect could happen. A squirrel with four legs crosses or bridges two live phases, and boom, you've got a problem. So the animals use that conductor not as an end in itself, but as a highway. They're just trying to get someplace. They're curious, or they hear some buzzing, or it's warm, or their buddies said, hey, the party's down here, or whatever. So, line guard for overhead power lines, and actually, it doesn't just have to be power lines. We have a lot of telecommunication customers, cable TV, telephone, you name it. If it's an overhead line and it can serve as a highway to a squirrel, or any other rodent, a snake, any number of things, line guard blocks that highway. So it's independent of what those devices and what those voltage ratings are. Similar to that, our pole guard blocks access from the ground. So an animal that tries to crawl from the ground up to a pole-mounted transformer can't get there because the highway, the pole, is blocked. So we have the mechanism of basically creating a virtual overhead fence. So line guard is actually a universal solution for overhead protection. It's the name says line guard, but in fact, we're not actually guarding the line, we're guarding the assets on the line. And instead of just guarding it, it's actually repelling them. It doesn't do anything until it's acted upon by the animal. It just sits there. So there's absolutely zero effect to electrical properties. It's not affecting voltage, it's not affecting insulation, it's not affecting, any of all the line spacings that you would have anyway still apply. So it's simply a dumb plastic device sitting on the line that in fact spins or moves if and when an animal comes upon it. And he'll do that because he's curious. What we've found more often than not with animal behavior, as soon as you put something on the line, they come check it out. They're curious. So they're not necessarily intending to be nefarious. They just want to come see what's there. And so our design basically moves or spins around the conductor once the animal engages with it. And that makes him unstable. It turns him upside down. He's got to hang on for dear life. And so that's a problem. So, and then we've learned over time, this actually works with pretty much anything that crawls. As small as a mouse, larger issues like rats, monkeys, sloths in many overseas and even domestic environmental refugee, what's the right word, parks that have protected species. A sloth is a good example of that, but other animals as well. They will use the overhead lines to escape predators or just to feel more safe because they can crawl on the line and the fox or the dog or the wolf or whatever can't do that. And so they will escape to higher terrain and the conductors give them a chance to do that. So that's why they're going up there. And I'll also add that's also why we see a lot of this with distribution power lines, somewhat transmission, but the higher that you go in elevation from ground level, the less of an issue animal mitigation is. With the exception of birds, the crawling animals don't usually go much higher than the first line of defense, which are those distribution lines. So I'm going to switch here, Randy, and go to a video. Make sure I get this done correctly.
Okay. Let's see if it
Um,
works.
there we go. We'll share that one. And that means I've got to go to this one. Hopefully we can see that. Can you see that?
Yeah, it's fine. Oh,
That's the
there it is.
video plan?
There it
Okay.
is.
Okay, so this is squirrels are not good trained actors. It's very difficult without a lot of patience, more than I possess, to get a squirrel or any other animal to actually do what you want him to do on the line. So in this case, this is a homeowner customer who installed this on their overhead service entrance line, and was lucky enough to get this video. Now, he called it a squirrel, but we think it's probably more of a rat. You can see that tail is not a
Yeah.
bushy tail like a squirrel, but same difference. And what the squirrel has done, he's come from the right-hand lower corner of the video. You see he's given up on it. He checked it out. He turned him upside down. He hung by his feet. He finally gave up and went back. Now he's come back again, trying one more time, turns him upside down, finally gets frustrated. And about this point, he's going to say, there's got to be something else I can do. This is why we call this a jump barrier wheel, because it makes him jump over it. Hang on just a second. It makes him jump over that. And then what happens is it spins him off. Okay, now we're back to the presentation. Do I need to share that again or can everybody see that?
We see your presentation. It's fine.
Okay. All right. So the question is, well, where can I use that? And the answer is pretty much everywhere. If it's an overhead conductor, um, we already mentioned that video you saw is a single phase line, but we have these on lots and lots of three phase ground lines, neutrals, doesn't matter because it doesn't affect anything to do with the electricity supply. So it's just basically a spinner on the line. And so what we tell customers to do, you can put it anywhere on the line between where you think the animals come on the line and whatever you're trying to protect. Maybe a transformer, maybe a substation, maybe a switch, a recloser, any number of things. Whatever's on the end of the line that you want to protect, instead of having to cover that device, you put a blockade on the highway so the animals can't even get to that device. So you can put these up in one of two situations, either de-energized. We have some lucky utilities that have enough redundancy they're able to, put these on de-energized. But we also have what we call hotline clamps. These are easy to install. The line guard literally snaps over the line, so you can wear your insulated gloves. And then we have large solid aluminum block, C clamps, if you will, that can be, with a wrench or uh, a eye bolt hot stick. You just screw it down tight on whatever conductor you're putting it on, and so that keeps you from having to shut down the power. Um, we have a standard size. The rollers are designed at 1 inch openings. Most conductors are less than that in diameter, but the critical requirement is that the roller be able to spin freely on the line. And there's a series of rollers. There's 5 of these, and they're all independent. So you don't want to get by with two or three. A squirrel will jump those. So you want all 5, all spinning independently. But if your conductor, and a good example of this would be like either a triplex type line with sort of a twisted rope is what we call it, where you've got maybe 2 conductors or even 3, and then a reinforcement cable. Those conductor bundles, if you will, can be quite large. Anything over an inch, you have to cut the rollers back. We used to have our customers do that. You can do it yourself, but we started offering it because it was so popular. And we started off in that as well. So we have what we call a triplex kit, which is the same kit. It just has larger openings on the rollers. And then we've got applications again from single phase up to the largest I know of, even though it's larger than what we spec. We know we've got customers using these on 77 kV lines. There may be some higher than that, but we don't know where every customer is using it. This gives you the example of we talked about the T stands for triplex. So if you have a cable bundle that's multiple conductors and a reinforcement cable, then that roller opening has been cut back to be larger so that the roller can still spin it. If it doesn't spin, it's a useless system. It will not help you. So it has to spin. And then we've got these clamps that we had special made. Important because the edge of the clamp, the face of it, has to be smooth because we want that face of the roller to be able to spin freely against it and not get hung up when a squirrel or a rat, as you saw in the video, engages with it. So that's line guard. The second way that we deter these pests is with pole guard. Pole guard, same principle applies. We treat the pole like a highway for critters to get to the overhead assets. Pole guard blocks that. So we use rigid plates. They're fixed around the pole. They have 7 rollers around the plates. And so it's a literal blockade. The animal has to hang upside down on the plates. They've got little holes in it so he can see through it and tempts him to want to keep going, but there's no way over it except around the outside. And when he tries to get around the outside, he's going to grab hold of a roller that's going to spin and he can't get his claws in it and he's done. So, other types of wraps that are very ubiquitous, no disrespect, but we've seen animals just jump right past them. You give a squirrel a head start and boom, he's right over it. So pole guard, they can't get by. So we're going to go back and find another share here. This started on me accidentally, but again, squirrels are not trained actors. Can you see that again, Randy, this new video?
Sorry, John, I have my mic turned off. Yes, I can see it just fine.
Okay. So squirrels are not trained actors, so I had to get this one from a pecan tree. We put about the same diameter as a power pole, in this case, a wooden power pole. You can see the pole guard mounted around the pole, or in this case, the tree. The squirrel is doing his darndest to try to get by it, works all the way around it, keeps trying, and sooner or later he's going to give up because he just can't figure out how to get over there. This particular video, I don't think I got an example of him trying, but if they grab that roller, it spins and they can't hang on to it. So that uh, pole guard plates, the same design, we use it for steel, concrete, and wood. And so it doesn't really matter what the pole is made of, but it must be round. It is possible. We've got minor examples of sort of rectangular poles or other geometries. So it is possible, but that's definitely a custom item. So just some examples here. This is both pole guard for a wood pole as well as line guard, but applied in a slightly non-traditional sense. In this case, guy wires that are not horizontal. They're on obviously the angle, and yet this customer, this is a water treatment plant. This customer put these up because their installed guy guards that are fairly ubiquitous weren't doing the job. So they added our line guard over and above their traditional guy guards, and problem solved. Completely, problem disappeared. So you can see on the wood pole. So basically, this picture doesn't show what's at the top of the pole, but that's clearly what they're trying to protect. Another couple of interesting examples. Picture on the left shows a steel pole. And so exact same system, it just mounts differently. And so it uses the same sort of steel tensioning bands that we have for street signs and things of that nature. So it's actually easier to install than the wood pole version, and we're hopefully to move to a more standard system, irrespective of the pole, but that's where we're at right now. And then you can see on the right, if there's a conduit up the pole, these get very specific. The spacing has to be sort of just right, but that's a nice, 4-inch conduit that's also stepped off the pole. And we were able to come up with a mechanism to extend the pole guard in sort of an oblong direction, and that still worked. So that can be done as well, but obviously those take a little more discussion back and forth. Pole guard can be used on just about any round pole. The ideal mounting location is because most distribution power poles will rise as they get taller. And so the diameter shrinks a little bit. So if you can find the point or the height where the diameter is roughly 12 inches, that's how the plates are molded, is for a 12-inch diameter. 305 millimeters for those of you in the SI system. And for smaller poles, if there's too big of a gap, let's say it's a 9-inch pole or a 9.5 or 10 where you're going to mount it, and you've got maybe an inch or inch and a half gap between the pole and the plates, we have this very simple flexible conduit that's easy to install. It just sits above the system and it can actually be zip tied to the pole guard plates so it doesn't, squirt away. But that's a flexible wrap that will block that gap between the pole and the pole guard plate system. And again, as I said, we can mount it to steel, concrete, wood, um, and custom designs where appropriate. Okay, so if we take care of most of the crawling animals that are going to get up on the line and stop that, what does critter guard have for birds? Well, it's been a challenge because we've learned that birds don't behave like animals. What's great about crawling animals, from our perspective, is that regardless of what type of animal you're talking about, the behavior on a power line is very similar. So whether it's a squirrel or a snake, the reason they're there, how they act, is pretty typical. Unfortunately, with birds, they're not like that. So if you've got a problem with birds of prey, hawks, eagles, ospreys, large birds, they tend to be hunters and they tend to, for the most part, tend to be loners. They don't like competition in their hunting ground. On the other hand, small birds like sparrows, wrens, pigeons, swallows, you name it, those birds fly in flocks and groups and have this sort of, um, you know, uh, group mentality. So we came up with this technology. It's kind of our version of it. Um, it's not a mechanical diverter. It doesn't scare anything away. The birds just don't like it. It's a scent that's based on a technology that's well known for birds, but what we did was we made it long lasting. This is a chemical that's safe and environmentally friendly, but the downside of it was you'd use it in a fogger, for instance, and the next day you couldn't tell you ever used it. Well, that's not all that great. And so we developed this formula that will last up to 4 months, have a couple of different formulations of it. So when you hang it up, and that's what you do, you literally just hang it, and it creates a scent that the birds don't like. And they will literally leave the area because they don't like that smell. It gives them a headache or who knows what. So they just move on, and that's all we care about. We're not trying to kill them. We're not trying to cage them. We're not trying to relocate them other than by their own volition to say, go someplace where it doesn't stink. And so this has worked well for us with a variety of substations where you have sensitive equipment down below. Might be a control cabinet, transformer cabinet, it could be phase bushings, any number of things where birds will roost or nest above on the structure, the substructure, and then poop all over down below. And everybody hates that. Nobody likes it. And since you don't really know where they're at, no one's at the substation, it's hard to tell. And so by putting up the bird block, you literally just hang it sort of all over with recommended spacing depending on the problem you're trying to solve. And we'll work with you on that for how much you need over how much of an area. But we find that most utilities will pick a small area that's sort of a target area. Again, it might be a bus bar, a control cabinet, or something that they're very concerned about. And so they just put some in a specific area and the birds are gone. They don't come back. So that's just a wonderful thing. We say it's a vapor barrier. What it is not is a force field. You can't just hang it up and expect that the birds won't approach it. Birds, like the other animals we talked about, they're curious. They're going to check it out. So they'll come and they might light. They might, perch someplace. But if they get a whiff of this stuff, then they're going to move on. And we've seen by customer testimony, we've seen uh, groups of birds, up to hundreds, that in about 2 days or three at the most from hanging up the first application, the birds are gone. They're down to one bird, and then a day or two later, zero birds. And so, and what we think happens, even though this does have a shelf life, it will fade. The scent is not as strong over time. But even when that's the case, the bags still hang there, and it's all organic, so they'll just rot and fall down at some point. But if they do, or before they do, the birds will recognize these little cotton pouches hanging there, and they know that that was the source of their uncomfortableness, so they don't come back. And again, that's one of the other objectives that we have from the line guard and the pole guard products. No maintenance. Once you put these up, you don't touch them again. You don't have to go back. You don't have to do anything. There's no, you don't have to take them down for thermography. You don't have to, do any of that. We've got bird block and substations, overhead lines, cross arms on poles, generator stations, warehouses, service garages. These are kind of fun. Um, the service guys absolutely hate birds all over their trucks when they're getting ready to load up for the day. And they're in high bay ceilings, the birds are flying in and out. They crap all over the stuff in the truck. And now you got to deal with that. So you hang it up in a warehouse, never have to deal with it again. So that's a nice thing. There's just some examples. Two different subs. The one on the left is a large nuclear power station. You can see the gas-filled phase conductors at the top, and they're literally using hot sticks to hang the bags. You can see a close-up of the bags at a different substation on the right, where a live substation didn't have to shut anything down, literally just hanging the bags looped together because we recommended a specific spacing and they didn't think they could get them quite that close. And so we doubled up the bags in one location to make a stronger scent in one location so it would propagate further. And that worked. So, and that particular substation you're looking at was right next to a nature preserve with waterfowl all through the area and had been for years. And once these bags went up, they left. They just got trained. It's like, we're not going to go back there. So that's kind of the story. Um, Basically preaching to the choir, I hope, but don't wait for your next animal outage. You know it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. But consider Critter Guard because we're not like those other guys. We're distinctly different. We block the highway. rather than covering a device. Doesn't matter what the devices are, it gives you pretty much asset protection all over your entire footprint. So, and again, once installed, no maintenance and no repeat outages. We were constantly amazed by that, um, you know, examples like Ameren and American Electric Power and Entergy and you name it keep coming back and then they keep buying more product. And it's like, are you replacing these? No, this is new. I said, well, what about the old ones? We never have to touch them. Once we put them up, we never go back. So we're proud of that. Look forward to your interest. Give us a call or a shout or get on the website, and we're happy to help you out. Appreciate your time and attention. And any questions, we'll go from there.